we've had a lot of fun with our guests over the last several weeks as we've gotten to know more of the future opponents for UCF in the Big 12. And this week, our focus is on TCU. We welcome in Geoff Mitchell at the FrogCast TCU, proud member of the TCU 24/7 Sports. Geoff, welcome in to Sons of UCF Live.
Hey, I am glad to be with you all. It's excited to be talking about football rather than realignment. Glad to be here with you all.
So let's start with realignment, Geoff. And
let's talk about realignment.
What is the reaction in the TCU community to the new additions, BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati?
Well, there is excitement because, to be honest, aside from maybe Boise, who is justified, these are the best four programs that the Big 12 could have added. Houston obviously is in the middle of a massive media market. Obviously, I was a big advocate of UCF, to be honest, and Cincinnati has made their way into the playoffs, so you can't really argue about that. And BYU is, they're 65, 70,000 fans. They are competitive. They might as well have won the Pac-12 last year. And so these are the best four programs that the Big 12 could have added. There's no sugarcoating that losing Oklahoma is terrible in terms of national perception, and losing Texas is terrible because of brands. But maybe between Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU, one of those four teams can beat Kansas and replace Texas as one of the cowbells for the conference.
Geoff, you're actually in a unique position to answer this question, so I'm glad you're on with us tonight. Obviously, TCU was one of the last programs to transition from Group of Five to Power Five. So what do we have in store for us? What were the growing pains or the pain points that you saw as TCU transitioned there? And what should UCF fans kind of prepare themselves for as we make that transition?
There is going to be a noticeable transition. TCU, as you all may or may not know, similar to UCF, in 2010, a couple years before they made the jump, went 13-0. They won the Rose Bowl. They beat a top 5 team in Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. And then in 2012, went 7-6, their first year in the Big 12. In their second year in 2013, they went 4-8. And so what you're going to find is depth is a massive issue. I think the starting 22 for, say, TCU in 2008, 9, and 10, when they finished in the top 10 3 straight years, was as good as anybody in the top 10. But when you get below that top 22, starting 22, it thins out pretty quick. And so if you get a serious injury going up against Tulane and Tulsa, you can manage that. But when you get a serious injury, in your next 3 games were for TCU, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Texas, or a good West Virginia team, you cannot mask that all that well. And so depth is going to be a serious issue. I don't doubt what UCF's going to be able to bring to the field for their starting 22. It's what do you have underneath that? Because in the depth of running against a Power 5 team every single week, you're going to find your depth in the trenches matters most, even in a league like the Big 12, even though that stereotype is dying. But I think the other transition is just, what are you going to do with all this money? Going from $7 or $8 million a year in the AAC, you can just say, oh my gosh, I got all this money now in a $35 to $45 million Big 12 contract. But figuring out how to wisely utilize those resources will not happen overnight. And I know football drives the train on all this, but you do have a basketball program. Big 12 is big in baseball. And so you're going to have to figure out where to invest all those resources, and the return on that investment will not come your second full season in the Big 12. And I think that's going to be where the growing pains are going to come.
Gary Patterson out after a very successful 20-year run. Sonny Dykes in, coming off a 5-7 season. What are the expectations for this year for the Horned Frogs?
Well, like all teams, after a couple of weeks of practice, we assume that we're going to go 15-0 and win 2 games and win the national championship and playoff. So, there's no denying it's a massive transition from Gary Patterson. If it were not for Gary Patterson, we would have been a peer institution in the American for the last decade. There's just no denying that. TCU would not be in the Big 12. We would not have had all of these top 10 finishes. He's the reason that they won 10 games, 7 out of 10 straight years from 2008 to 2017. And every TCU fan will thank him. He's the only living coach other than Nick Saban that has a statue for him outside the stadium. But basically, since the end of the Alamo Bowl, when they beat a Stanford team that had played for the Pac-12 title, TCU has gone stale. There's no nice way to say it. I don't know if the game caught up with the Patterson's 4-2-5 defense. I think the offense got pretty lax and lazy. And the problem is recruiting has continued to get better. There is so much talent on this TCU team. And so when Sonny Dykes comes in, he's got more toys than he's ever been able to operate with. And so anything less than probably 8 wins in Sonny Dykes' first year, I think is going to be a disappointment. There's too much talent. There's, a potential first-round draft pick with Quentin Johnston as a wide receiver. There's 2 experienced two quarterbacks that could start at a variety of Power 5 programs that are fighting for the starting job this year. And I think the shift from the 4-2-5 to the 3-3-5 is going to be a needed change for the Frogs. And so I think that expectations are pretty high for Sonny Dykes. What Sonny is one of the reasons I think that our athletic director, Jeremiah Donati, was so drawn to him for was he's conversant in what Patterson honestly didn't want to get excited about. The transfer portal, NIL, and Sonny is a master of that. I feel really good about his ability to pick up talent in the transfer portal. And one of the things about TCU that you all may not know about is the school is just loaded. I mean, we produce tons and tons of millionaires that wanted to put the money into work in the black market, if you know what I mean. But they now have a place to put it above board. And so I will not be surprised that over the next 5 years, as the Wild West of NIL kind of begins to regulate itself and begin to level out, TCU is not going to get laps run around them for money, because Sonny Dykes is excited about the alignment of the program with the wealth of the boosters and putting a winning program on the field.
Tell us about the passion of the fan base and what a football game day is like.
Well, I'm 47 years old. I've been a TCU fan since I was a freshman in college many years ago. Anybody that tells you that going to a TCU game is the same as going to Death Valley, whether Clemson or LSU, is just lying. Here's the night and day between UCF and TCU. We are a small private school, and we all but have a cap on our enrollment to continue to be a really quality undergraduate experience. We have strong graduate programs, we have strong PhD programs, but TCU is built to be an undergraduate institution, even though they're making changes to grow the graduate program. So we don't have, some schools have more undergrads than we have living alumni over the age of 50. And so we have a stadium that seats roughly 50,000 people. When the Frogs are hopping, it is a great place to be. It is packed. It is built to be loud. You can put 50,000 people in there. They have amazing luxury boxes that I was lucky to sneak into a couple years ago, not because I could afford it. In the student section, we get one of the highest participation rates of undergraduates percentage-wise into the game. And so we don't have, 40, 50, 60,000 undergrads, but we can put 5,000 or 6,000 undergrads right there in front of the opposing bench, covering it from the 20 to the 20, and make a whole lot of noise. But when we're bad, it reflects it. Any TCU fan that says we don't have a strand of fair weather fan inside of us is wrong. But the upside is there's a lot of excitement right now. So I will not be surprised if we have back to where we were in attendance in 2017 this season, and there's a lot of excitement for Fort Worth. You asked what it's like on game day. Every school thinks they tailgate really well. We do have a pretty solid tailgate scene, almost to the detriment of attendance. But we have a great scene on game day. It's very family friendly. Every little kid can run across the field as the team takes the field for the frogs little frogs that are running out on the field. So it's a great place to be on game day. And when things are going well, it's as good as any program in the Big 12.
Geoff, UCF might not win the 4 quarters, but we win the pregame and we win the postgame every single time. What's a beverage that we have to try while we're out there? Is there a food choice that we have to kind of sink our teeth into? Give us something to look forward to as we make our way out to TCU.
Well, unlike other people in the South, and Texas is not the South. Let's just get that on the record here. We don't eat pigs, we eat cows. And so what you need to find is some brisket. Somebody's going to be smoking a brisket while they're there at TCU. But what you need to do is find one of the wealthy boosters that's got a great tailgate spot that had Travis Heim from Heim Barbecue, who is a massive TCU fan, that Texas Monthly has voted Heim Barbecue as the best barbecue in Texas, and it's right there in Fort Worth. You need to get yourself some Heim Barbecue, and just for the sake of stereotypes, you need to drink a Shiner Bock beer, which is out of a little distillery in Shiner, Texas. It's unfortunately been bought up by the national brands here in the last few years, but Shiner Bock is the drink of choice to let everybody know that you're a Texan.
You guys have a long history playing against Texas. 92 times you guys have squared off. They're leaving. What's the plan? Are you guys still going to play them every year? Or are they kind of just saying goodbye, or what's going on?
My hunch is they're saying goodbye. My hunch is that game, that series is coming to an end. And I have a feeling Texas fans are pretty excited about it. Even when things were turning against Gary here in the last several years, they still found a way to beat Texas, even when the Frogs were having a rough season. So my hunch is if Texas keeps one game with a team in the Big 12, it's probably going to be Texas Tech, and that's probably going to be more issues from the State House than it is from where the most competitive football is going to be on the field. But I think Texas is glad to leave the Big 12. I'm looking forward to watching them going 3-9 in the SEC, but they would be losing a game almost every year if they were still playing TCU.
Earlier, you mentioned basketball, baseball, those transitions. What are some of the sports that UCF fans are going to watch TCU be pretty good at?
Well, you're going to see us be really good at baseball. And TCU has been going to the College World Series almost every other year since 2010, and they've been on a really solid run to get to Omaha. And so I know that the SEC obviously has a lot of dominant programs, but even with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, Texas Tech I'm gonna get shot for saying this among my fans. Texas Tech is the best program in the conference in terms of their ability to put something on the field to win the Big 12. TCU got a piece of the Big 12 this year in baseball. There's going to be a lot of excitement for baseball and a lot of competitive games in Big 12 baseball. West Virginia is a under the radar quality program. Oklahoma State has historically been a great program and continues to be. And Baylor is also a competitive program. And then with Houston coming in, no one is surprised when Houston wins the American Athletic Conference in baseball, and no one is surprised when they are hosting a national seed in baseball. So I think baseball is going to continue to be strong, even with Texas, which is a historically amazing program, and Oklahoma, who had a great run this year, leaving. But all that being said, you need to get ready to join the best basketball league in the country. No one can debate it. Hands down, the best basketball in the country is played in the current Big 12, and it will be played even more in the future Big 12. And so TCU has historically been a doormat in the Big 12, and this year they kind of finally got their act together with Jamie Dixon. They had a ridiculous game with Arizona in the second round where we got robbed and got knocked out. But TCU is a preseason top 10 to top 15 in a lot of different unofficial rankings going into 2022, 2023. And so if you like to travel and you got some money, you need to go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse up there in Lawrence. Houston joining. Houston is obviously a powerhouse in basketball. Oklahoma State is up and down, but historically a quality program. Texas Tech continues to be a great program. Bob Huggins is still causing problems in West Virginia. And obviously you have Kansas and Baylor that have won back-to-back national titles. And then for 2 years back, Texas Tech, if they hadn't blown a lead in the second half, it would have been 3 straight titles for the Big 12 that has nothing to do with Texas or with Oklahoma. Best basketball in the country is played in the Big 12. If you go 500, you're in the tournament and you're going to be above an 8 seed.
Yeah, if UCF goes 500 in basketball, you're going to have a lot of happy Knights fans.
Hey, Geoff, what
well,
the heck is a horn?
I make a point because we're peers having done this journey 10, 12 years ago. If you were having a hard time in the AAC, just buckle up for Big 12 basketball because it is brutal. I'm so old. When I was a kid, the best basketball program best basketball league in the country when I was a kid was the Big East. And it was physical, and it was just a different brand of basketball. And you knew that, 2/3 of the teams in the conference could get in the tournament and make noise. It's the same thing in the Big 12. It is rough. It is brutal. And if you go 500, you're one of the top 15 teams in the country, in my opinion.
Geoff, what the heck is a horned frog?
A horned frog is a horned lizard. It's a tiny. There's a great YouTube on it from National Geographic or Pop Science. I can't remember what it was, but a horned frog is a tiny little lizard in West Texas. They talk about Fort Worth, where the West begins. It begins in West Texas and goes, or in Fort Worth and goes all the way west. It's a tiny little lizard, but per capita, it is one of the strongest and most deadly little lizards you can ever bump into. And so when it feels like it's attacked and you're coming up on it, it will spit blood out of its eye to attack you. So if you've ever seen, somebody with bloodshot eyes, imagine them spitting blood at you at a distance 5 times their body length. That's what a horned frog is. And when TCU made its way, it relocated a couple of times. When it finally arrived in Fort Worth, the campus was full of horned lizards, and they adopted that as their mascot.
Well, on that happy note, Geoff Mitchell at the FrogCast TCU, thanks for telling us a little bit about the Horned Frogs and the program. We're looking forward to visiting, and thanks for being with us on Sons of UCF Live.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Welcome to the Big 12. I'm looking forward to having you all. I know that people outside of UCF have given you all a hard time, but I was really excited when you hung your banner for 2017. I'm just going to say it because I have a banner hanging for 2010. I know it doesn't count, but it feels really good to talk about. So enjoy, and I look forward to y'all joining the Big 12.
We'll have a shiner with you when we visit. Thanks much, Geoff.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks.